Hello, welcome to the Quantum Healer. This is Dr. Tracey. I'm really excited about today's recording, today's show. We have a panel here to talk about yoga and the healing benefits of yoga. For those of you that are not familiar, yoga is an ancient practice. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years. And one of my teachers, Baron Baptiste, he always said that something only sticks around that long if it works. And so we have this explosion of yoga all over, different styles of yoga people are practicing. And there's just so many benefits. Even today now, doctors and scientists are doing research. They're finding the benefits of yoga are astounding on so many levels. And I have a quote from Johns Hopkins Medicine. They said the U.S. military, National Institutes of Health, and other large organizations are incorporating scientific validation of yoga's value in health care. And these studies continue to go on. You hear about them all the time. It is always talking about, yoga benefits MS or osteoporosis or arthritis or mental health. And the more studies that come out, the more it validates this ancient practice. So this is probably going to be a multi-show discussion, because we can't take all of yoga and combine it into a 30-minute segment. There's just too much to talk about. So my first yoga teacher, she used to say that yoga is the oldest self-development program in the world. And I think I've used that too, and I'm sure she didn't come up with it. I think she took it from somewhere too, but it's true. And we constantly are seeing these benefits in ourselves and in our students. So everybody here is a yoga teacher that I know personally, because I've trained them all. My yoga studio was around for 22 years, one yoga and wellness center in the central New Jersey area. And so I got together with some of my students, my former students, to get here together and talk about the benefits of yoga as they've seen it personally in their lives and through their students and all of that. So excited to be with all of you. Thank you for carving out some time in your busy day. So we are going to talk about how yoga benefits all of the layers of the human person. And that's something that yoga has done very well. It's kind of created this, I'm not just my physical body. I'm not just my body and emotions. There's all these layers of the human person. And yoga has a positive benefit on all the layers of the human person. So we're going to talk about all of that today and all of the ways in which that helps. So the first layer that yoga talks about is the physical body, is what food or body sheath. And so I'm here talking to Reshma Patel. You are a physical therapist, and so you have seen the benefits of yoga for yourself and for your patients and your students. So tell everybody a little bit about you and then some of these great physical benefits you've seen.
So I have been a physical therapist for, a very long time, over 15 years or whatever. And I turned it into a healing practice because of getting my yoga teacher training and then meditation training, because I found that it really allowed me, as a physical therapist, I was focused a lot on the body, and I felt like yoga allowed me to go deeper and kind of take a whole body approach, like mind, body, spirit. And I found that through this, in adding yoga into my healing practice, I found that it allowed people to heal deeper on deeper levels, if that makes sense. Yes, physically, it allowed them to have more flexibility, more strength. They were having more power, because this power now doesn't just come from them lifting weights. It's from these poses that allow you to use. It's you got to make sure you're so aware and present in the moment to get that pose to work. So it really allowed them to kind of heal as this like, I don't completely, I want to say, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I loved when I found yoga. It was like a cheat sheet almost for healing, because it was, you know, you're taught certain things, especially in Western medicine. You're taught certain things externally that can help you, like physical body, your own, you know, weights, things like that. Whereas yoga teaches you to take what you have and how to like use that. So now you don't have to have weights. You can use your own body weight. You know, you don't have to have a stretching band to help you. You can take your hands and just, you know, or like whatever you have available to you. And I think I loved that part of it.
Yeah. I love props, but I do love practicing without props, so that you're relying on your own body. You know, it kind of forces you to say, okay, this is as far as I should be going right now.
Yes.
Or, oh, I might be able to do a little bit more. I'm actually stronger than I thought without the block or whatever. So the postures you mentioned, the yoga poses, and there's, who knows, we could debate forever how long or how many poses there are. But in my understanding of hatha yoga and that practice is that the postures will either provide you with strength where you need it or flexibility where you need it. So can you recall, either personally or with a client, is there any one particular thing that you saw that change because of yoga?
I think if I can, I mean, I've seen it so many times, but yes, I think where I've seen it the strongest is probably in post-surgical patients, because what we're trying to do is strengthen, you know, a certain, like, let's say you had knee surgery, right? So you want to strengthen certain muscles in the thighs and the lower leg, but you want to get flexibility in the opposite muscles, right? So you have to monitor the way you're doing that, right? Because then now they have also limitations from the surgeon, like you can't move past this range or whatever. And I feel like when I've seen it in post-surgical patients, I love it because certain poses, like if I have them in like a down dog, for example, right? Now it's weight bearing, but it's not, I can hold their hips, I can guide them back, I can put a strap around it and hold them up while they're getting that hamstring stretch, but now they're also getting that weight bearing through the arms, they're getting the activation of the quads. So it's like this you're like accomplishing so many things with this like one pose, right? And that's what I loved about it, because otherwise what I was taught in school is like, okay, you stretch your hamstrings, then you turn over and you work your quad, right? And then you turn another way and you do your abductors, which is the side muscles. And then, you know, like there's all these different positions versus like this one pose, you put a block in, you're getting, you know, like that's what I loved about it. It's so efficient.
Yeah.
It allows not just me as a therapist and as a healthcare practitioner to be efficient, but it allows the patient now to be efficient in their practice and say, oh my God, my therapy was so, you know, you got so much done.
Right. And I think we already know the answer to this, but do you think that the yoga breathing accompanying the postures also has a huge effect?
Oh my God. Yeah. Like, because one of the biggest things is because it's so difficult for anyone that's had an injury, the hardest thing is pain. You want to, right? Just like, what is it? You resist pain, right? And you lean towards pleasure. So anytime you have to do anything, it's like, I'm so afraid of pain, I don't want to do it. Whereas like if you allow them to focus on the breathing, even myself, like when I am doing something I don't want to do and I can feel myself getting like, I don't want to do it, and it's like harder. But if I just focus on the breathing alone, it completely takes you out of that fear of pain, that fear of like it's going to hurt or I'm not going to be able to do it. And so the breathing, I would say the breathing is like an assistant. You know, it's like, absolutely.
I was in PT just the other day for this shoulder, and I'm talking, you know, so he has me go to the wall and put my hands on the wall and start to back up. So what's he telling me? He's teaching me downward dog on the wall, and so I'm laughing in my head because I've already done down dog on the floor, but I can't use both hands yet. So I push up with my knees bent, but then I have to bring this hand up. So I'm doing like a 3-limb downward dog, but then I'm trying to kind of feel into where I can be. So he has me doing it on the wall, and I'm just you instinctively start doing the breath, right? So I'm doing my yoga breath. He's trying to talk to me. I'm like, and then he kind of like gets the hint and he backs up. And I'm thinking to myself, how much more of a benefit it would be if they taught the proper breathing to the people that were actually doing these exercises, instead of this like kind of chatter back and forth that's not allowing them to integrate what they're doing,
Yeah. And I think even when you talk to someone, it's a distraction, right? So now because you're taught to, they sometimes, like, I've seen patients where if I talk to them enough, they forget and they just start doing these crazy things. You're like, oh my God, you're doing it, right? Versus like them being so focused on. So it's a great distraction, but now you have this tool that benefits you and them, the breathing, which serves as a distractor in itself. And it allows them to have this oxygen. It allows their body to relax. It allows you to not have to work so hard to come up with the topics to talk about to distract them, right? Like, so it's really an amazing, amazing tool that I think absolutely needs to be implemented into.
I think all physical therapists should go through yoga training. I think it should be a component.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
And especially since medical doctors are now saying, oh, what would help you for this? Yoga, or meditation. So if physical doctors are also now prescribing this as a part of a healing benefit for their patients, then I don't know. I think everyone in the medical community should have to go through a yoga program.
I think so. I can only speak for me, and I went through it, and I feel like it changed me as a practitioner completely. And I have friends that are physicians, and whenever we have these kinds of conversations, the same thing. It's like you have these like aha moments or these mind-blowing moments where you're like, oh yeah. Like, it is that simple, but we don't think about it because we've been taught in Western school, right? And then when you're taught in Eastern school, you're taught this. So it's a nice way to kind of combine the two.
I'm all about the blending of modalities, Eastern and Western. And a lot of this show, that's what we're talking about. How can we incorporate? I'm not saying I love Western medicine, and I think there's a lot of benefits and great things that we'll talk about. But how about we integrate some of these other practices that can expedite our healing, bring us more joy, get us out of that kind of suffering state and into a more blissful place and all of that, right?
Yeah, I think, and as you're talking about that, right, it gives you joy, it gives you all this, and it allows you to have trust. The one thing you lose when you have an injury or a surgery or or trauma to your body, right, is trust. Because of that fear. That fear takes away that you can do this because you've been hurt now. So your body is so afraid to go back into that position or that area. And so, yes, I feel like combining this, when I don't have injury, I haven't had an injury or something like that where I feel like, or I'll say a traumatic enough injury where I have had that. But yet, when I get on the mat and do a practice, there are things where I know a pose is really hard and I'm like, ooh, this is going to test every part of me. But then you do it. And even if I do, like, the first time I did crow, right? I'm there and I can feel, I'm like, oh my God, my face is going to plant. I'm going to I'm going to hurt my nose. But then you do it. And yeah, of course you start with the pillows and the props, right? And then eventually there's this, I don't know, you stand taller, your chest expands because you're like, I did that.
Yeah.
And it allows you to gain trust in your body.
Yeah.
And that, I think there's nothing more powerful than when you can trust your body.
And you and I were talking briefly last week or a couple weeks, I don't know. We were talking briefly about you also having a shoulder injury, and realizing that restorative practices where you're not so active, where you're more receptive. So there's that also quality in yoga that you were saying had benefited.
Oh, thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, I hurt my shoulder. I had a calcification in the shoulder, and I couldn't even do this. I couldn't do this. I'll use this arm. I couldn't move it there were a lot of limitations. Like I couldn't even get it to the back of my head or tie my bra strap, right? Yeah, right? It's like these
I'm not
things,
there yet.
right? These things you take for granted.
Yeah.
And then realizing, so I was doing all the things, stretching and doing my yoga practice, and it would hurt, so I'd back off. But then, I don't know, so I think it was something inside of me said, all right, try restorative. You're doing the activity, go with that. And it seems counterintuitive that I would rest my body to get it to move better. It just felt really counterintuitive to be like, I do nothing so that I can get more. Like, how does that even make sense on what? Because you're taught, no pain, no gain. You gotta get to it.
Yeah.
And so it was real. It went against everything I know as a human. But I did a restorative practice, and I did it for almost 6 to 8 weeks. I stayed with it, and I'm not kidding, a lot of my motion, I'll say motion returned from my restorative practice, which was the limiting factor. And I know the strength will come once I have the motion and I can move through the range, but I was shocked at how fast my body was healing. There probably was not a day where I didn't feel the pain or think about the pain in my shoulder. There wasn't a moment in the day where I knew it was there. And then once I started this restorative practice with just 1 or 2 sessions, someone would say, oh, how's your shoulder? I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think about it until you just said that. Yeah. And I really would attribute it to that restorative practice.
And for me, that brings us to the next layer, which is the energy body, because as I said, there is this energetic component of the forceful kind of what people would define as masculine energy. I don't love that terminology anymore, but in yoga anyway, we do this masculine kind of forceful energy and the feminine receptive energy, and there is a beautiful marriage that has to happen in both of those. So on an energetic level, on a pranic level, prana is life force energy, you have this other body sheath. So I want to get to talking to Sarah a little bit about that.
Sure.
Hi, Tracey.
Hi, Sarah. First of all, I'm so glad to see you in person and to see you back to optimum health.
Absolutely, and I think it's interesting that we'll be discussing prana and energy, as I'll get into, but that was so much a part of my healing.
Yeah.
So much.
Do you want to share a little bit of your story with
Sure,
everyone?
Absolutely. So let me give a little bit of background with my experience with yoga. I was blessed to train under Tracey, and I was drawn to children, always have been. And they are some of the easiest human beings to teach yoga to, because they really only care about themselves. So I have a great time with them. They understand breath wonderfully, and they teach me so much. However, I realized through my recent diagnosis of leukemia back in July, just about 9 months ago, that so much of my practice and teaching children how to breathe was taking away from me practicing it myself. So when I was diagnosed with this out of the blue, terrible disease, because cancer is very difficult, and just hearing the word, you are diagnosed with leukemia with an acute mutation, talk about engaging the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, right? And in that moment, and Reshma talked about present awareness when working through fear and pain, I found that breath I took, that immediate breath in the surroundings of interns and the sweet, kind doctor who told me only to look at her eyes, that breath that I took really did inform the next 71 days of isolation. that was really difficult for me, but so difficult. But it also forced me in a beautifully gentle way to be in my body. Did it fail me physically? Yes. And I believe, in part, that was my doing for everything I was doing for everyone else. But then I understood that the breath and the presence is what was going to, like you said, marry Eastern and Western. Western medicine, I'm here. Eastern medicine, I'm in my body.
Yeah. I didn't love seeing you in isolation and going through that process, but every time you would post a picture of yourself in your room doing yoga, it was inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you. The mat never came off the floor. In fact, when my friends, I call them my friends because I was only allowed to see the same, nurses at times and the same custodians, cleaners, they'd come in and they would wipe around the mat. They would never lift the mat.
Aww.
So it was sacred ground. And they knew that 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock was my yoga hours. The only way I got through the days were hour by hour. 8 o'clock was breakfast, 9 o'clock was reading, 10 o'clock was yoga. And, sometimes the practice was just crying, really, laying down and crying. And other times the practice was empowering and, wow, I just got great numbers and I feel so good. But just yesterday, this took place. I can't remember why I was doing child's pose. Some of us yogis just fall into a pose like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon while we're prepping for dinner because it just feels good. I don't know, we're standing in a tree and my kids are like, what are you doing?
I know.
Then the dog is doing a down dog. But I went into child's pose. And I love that pose, I always have. And I put my hands in prayer. Just, you kind of put your hands over your head. And child's pose, you're on the ground and you're grounded. And I started to weep. And everything came back. The smell of the hospital, the rooms, the people. But what came back more powerfully was the breath. And it was an awareness. And it's so interesting we're talking about this today. Because there was an awareness yesterday that, and it continues to be a huge part of my practice in my life. I will always continue to resonate with children, but I cannot resonate with them well unless I'm in my body first.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I remember years ago, we talked about the chakra system, which falls into this whole layer of this sheath, right? And you were all about the chakras, except one. There was one you didn't love. Well, there was a color.
It was a particular color. And the color is orange. And for my whole life, this is really weird. And it is actually, I always have to say this to give proof to that it was a condition. It's in the DSM-4 of psychology, conditions, I guess you would call it. It's a fear of orange. So I didn't eat orange foods. I never wore orange as a child. And so as I was newly diagnosed with leukemia, I thought, okay, let's look at the flag and see what color that cancer flag is. Well, it is a bright orange. And I was like, oh my goodness, the universe, it's great, but it loves to tease you.
That's so true.
So I have come to really love orange because here's the thing. When you are fearful, as Reshma talked about, when you are fearful, you have to embrace the fear. Mm-hmm. You have to, it's so hard to love it or like it, but it's there for a reason. And I love orange. I don't love oranges. I have a hard time eating orange. Well, if you take, the orange carrot and dip it in ranch, it's like white and orange, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get into orange anymore.
When you came in today, I was almost waiting for you to wear orange.
I know, I should have.
But this is close.
I know, we're getting there. We're getting there.
We're still there.
Yeah.
So I just want to go back and talk a little bit about the breath again, because you were talking about a lot of things with that. I remember also a time, I don't know if you guys know this story or not, I might have shared it, but I actually was having an appendicitis, and the appendix actually wound up bursting by the time I got, because my husband, he said, it's just something you ate and it'll pass and just hang out. And eventually my girlfriend said, I really think I need to take her to the hospital. So it did wind up bursting. But Before that happened, I was in the waiting room in the hospital, and I just went into my breath, and I was rocking back and forth, and I just was rocking and breathing and rocking and breathing, and I just completely, I don't know what happened. I left that moment. I left the pain. It wasn't there. And eventually my girlfriend was shaking me, and she was like, I don't know where you just went, but like, we got to go back in. It was like 45 minutes later. Felt like a blip in time. It just, it allowed me to get through that difficult pain that I was in that moment. And I realize now with this shoulder that sometimes the pain is so hard. It's so much there. And I notice I'm restricting my breath in those moments, right? And I go, I'm feeling all this pain, and I'm constricted, and I'm not breathing. And then as soon as I open and I start taking those deep breaths again, the pain subsides, right? There's such a connection there. Did you notice that also for yourself?
Absolutely. I think there's not a lot of physical pain with this particular cancer. During the bone marrow transplant, which is something else that I went through, there is a lot of pain, and you use the breath to get through that. I always think of when babies are born, their first breath is a big balloon breath in their belly. And I think that intuitively that's how we're supposed to breathe. But as we move through this world and the stressors that come, it's kind of in and up, like you're talking about. Yeah. There's that constriction. So I don't like the word literally, but I think it works here. We literally have to retrain our bodies how to breathe. So when you're given a diagnosis, like I was given on July 15th, your body takes that intuitive breath and it sends a message to your brain. And it allows energy to work and say, yeah, but you're going to be okay. Yeah. Just hold on. Yeah. And after a while, you have that intuition to drive down the Garden State Parkway and, be dealing with some difficult drivers, one of which is probably myself, and breathe. Your body is just breathing. So it was definitely a part of my healing.
Yeah.
And now I can breathe and smile, and it's great. Yeah.
Anything else you want to share about the pranic body, or the Pranamaya-Kosha, as we call it?
I was always a very guarded person. Little bit of Tracey remembers this from 10 years ago, wanting to get into yoga for the physical part, and I was a personal trainer. And when she introduced the chakras, it was beautiful to me. It was a whole new world. And then when I understood what breath meant, I thought, I've been breathing wrong my entire life, and this is actually working. And it began taking my guard down. And I was able to be more vulnerable. It's not something I think we learn within an hour. It's a practice. Yeah. Just like yoga. We're practicing daily. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.